10,000 pounds, liquid? What are you hauling, rocket fuel, industrial sludge? Water, I said. Basically, I'm putting a small swimming pool on top of it. Stitch stared at me for a solid 10 seconds, his expression unreadable. Then he let out a short bark of laughter. A pool? On a trailer? You serious? Deadly serious. He shook his head, but a grin played on his lips. All right, crazy man. Gonna need double axles, heavy-duty suspension, electric brakes on both, reinforced I-beam frame, maybe steel decking. Gonna need leveling jacks, serious ones at all four corners. Why in God's name? HOA wouldn't approve my patio, I explained curtly. My name is Mark. I live in Serene Vistas, a name chosen, I suspect, by someone with a profound sense of irony, or perhaps just a deep love for beige paint swatches. It's your classic American suburb, neat houses, suspiciously green lawns, and an HOA that operates with the quiet menace of a Bond villain. Only instead of world domination, their goal is ensuring your mailbox doesn't deviate 0.5 degrees from the approved vertical axis. Me? I'm a simple man. I work as an engineer, which means I spend my days dealing with precise measurements and logical systems. All I wanted was to apply a little logic and precision to my own backyard. My dream wasn't extravagant. A modest patio extension, maybe 12 x 15 feet, paved with some nice flagstone, big enough for my trusty Weber grill, a couple of chairs, and maybe a small table for placing drinks while contemplating the crushing conformity surrounding me. I envisioned summer evenings, the scent of charcoal, the satisfying clink of ice in a glass. Simple pleasures. I did my homework, drew up detailed plans, top view, side view, drainage slope calculated to the nearest 1/10 of a degree, picked out some lovely Pennsylvania bluestone samples, full of character and natural variation, got a preliminary quote from a reputable landscaper. The final step, the only hurdle between me and backyard bliss, was submitting my plans to the Serene Vistas Architectural Review Committee, ARC, chaired by the perpetually disapproving Cynthia Carmichael. Cynthia was a former interior decorator who believed visual harmony was achievable only through strict adherence to a palette consisting entirely of shades of off-white and taupe. Her own house looked like the inside of a particularly unimaginative mushroom. The ARC, under her iron-fisted rule, was notorious for rejecting plans based on criteria that seemed to materialize out of thin air, like improperly proportioned shrubbery or excessively cheerful welcome mats. I went into the ARC meeting, held, naturally, in Cynthia's oppressively beige living room, with cautious optimism. My plans were neat, professional, compliant with every written rule in the HOA handbook. What could possibly go wrong? Mark, Cynthia began, peering at my blueprint through her severe rectangular glasses, her lips pursed as if she'd just tasted spoiled milk. Thank you for submitting your patio proposal. She said patio like it was a communicable disease. The other two committee members, Mildred and Bob, nodded vaguely, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Now, Cynthia continued, tapping a perfectly manicured finger on my carefully chosen flagstone sample. This stone, the variation in color is quite pronounced, isn't it? We feel it creates a rather jarring visual transition from Mrs. Henderson's petunia bed 2 doors down. I blinked. Jarring? It's natural stone, Cynthia. Variation is part of its beauty, and Mrs. Henderson's petunias are like 60 feet away. Visual lines, Mark, she countered coolly. They carry. Furthermore, she slid the blueprint around, the proposed square footage. While technically within the 200 square foot limit for hardscaping additions, it feels, overly ambitious for a lot of this size. We worry it might encourage excessive outdoor lingering. Excessive outdoor lingering. Was she serious? It's a patio, I said, trying to keep my voice even. Lingering is kind of the point. Bob cleared his throat. And this curve here, he mumbled, pointing to a gentle sweep I'd designed to flow around an existing flower bed. Cynthia feels it's not a harmonious radius when viewed in conjunction with the roofline apex of the Miller house on the next street. I stared at them. The Miller house was 3 streets away and completely obscured by trees. Harmonious radius? Are you kidding me? You can't even see the Miller house from my backyard. Aesthetics are holistic, Mark, Cynthia sniffed. We have to consider the overall visual narrative of serene vistas. Your proposed design, unfortunately, introduces discordant notes. It lacks tranquility. I tried reasoning. I offered to switch to more uniform pavers, even though I hated them. I offered to slightly reduce the size. I offered to plant a harmonizing shrub to block the non-existent view of the Miller roofline. Nothing worked. Their objections were like smoke, impossible to grasp, impossible to argue against. The rejection letter arrived 3 days later. A masterpiece of bureaucratic obfuscation, citing failure to adhere to established community aesthetic standards, potential negative impact on neighborhood visual cohesion, and disharmony with the prevailing architectural vernacular. No specifics, no suggestions for improvement, just a big fat no stamped on my patio dreams. I stood in my backyard, rejection letter clutched in my fist, staring at the patch of grass where my beautiful flagstone patio was supposed to be. Fury, cold and hard, began to build. It wasn't just the denial, it was the reasoning, the sheer, unadulterated, subjective nonsense of it all. Visual cohesion, harmonious radius, excessive lingering? Fine. They wouldn't let me build a simple, tasteful patio on my property because it offended their delicate beige sensibilities. So be it. My engineering brain kicked into overdrive, fueled now by pure, high-octane spite. If I couldn't build on the property, what about something mobile? Something they couldn't regulate as a permanent structure? My first thought was a fancy RV, parked defiantly in the driveway. But where's the fun in that? Too common. A mobile hot tub? Getting warmer? But still seemed too small scale for the level of righteous indignation I was feeling. Then it hit me. A pool. The ultimate backyard luxury. Something Cynthia and the ARC would definitely never approve as a permanent installation. But what if it wasn't permanent? What if it was on wheels? The idea lodged itself in my brain and refused to leave. A pool, on a trailer, a mobile pool. I could park it in my driveway. I could, theoretically, park it on the street, briefly, legally. I could move it if they tried to claim it was a structure. The sheer, glorious absurdity of it was breathtaking. But why stop there? If I was going to build something this ridiculous, why not go all out? Not just a pool on wheels. An infinity pool on wheels, that vanishing edge, the symbol of ultimate luxury and questionable taste. Could it even be done? The technical challenge alone was almost appealing enough. Imagine the look on Cynthia's face when she saw an infinity pool parked next to my recycling bins. Down the rabbit hole I went. My evenings were no longer spent dreaming of flagstone, but researching heavy-duty trailer chassis, calculating water weight. Water is heavy over 8 pounds per gallon, meaning even a small pool would weigh thousands of pounds, and exploring the murky world of custom fiberglass tank fabrication. Could you put 1,500 gallons of sloshing water on a trailer and expect it to remain stable? What kind of suspension would that require? How would you even fill it? Drain it? And the infinity edge. How the hell do you keep one edge perfectly level and overflowing correctly when the whole damn thing is sitting on tires and adjustable jacks? Pumps, filters, catchment tanks, plumbing that could withstand bumps in the road. The logistical nightmare was immense. I found online forums dedicated to trailer conversions, agricultural tanks, even mobile baptismals. Seriously. People built mobile hot tubs, sure, but a mobile infinity pool? The consensus seemed to be theoretically possible, practically insane, structurally dubious, and financially ruinous. Perfect. Next step, the HOA bylaws. I dissected that cursed document like a frog in biology class. Pages and pages about permanent pools, setbacks, fencing, safety covers, approved coping materials, endless rules about patios, decks, sheds, gazebos, but vehicles, trailers, RVs? The rules were different. There were restrictions on how long you could park an RV or boat trailer in your driveway, usually 72 hours. Rules about commercial vehicles. Rules about street parking duration. But nothing specifically prohibited the contents of a legally registered and parked trailer. Was a pool on wheels an RV? No sleeping quarters. A boat? It definitely didn't float. It was technically just cargo on a trailer. Could they regulate cargo? This was my loophole. A gray area wide enough, perhaps, to float a very heavy, very spiteful mobile water feature. My plan? Build the pool on a chassis that could be legally registered as a trailer. Park it according to vehicle regulations. And let the HOA figure out which bylaw it violated. This, however, was not a project for Bob's discount patio pavers. This required specialists. People who dealt with heavy metal, sloshing liquids, and potentially disastrous physics problems. My quest for contractors began. First, the foundation. The trailer itself. I needed something custom, something incredibly robust. I found Stitch Morgan's custom welding and fabrication out near the industrial park. Stitch looked like he wrestled crocodiles for fun. Grizzled, muscular, perpetually squinting through safety glasses, his workshop echoing with the screech of grinders and the hiss of welding torches. I unrolled my preliminary sketches on his cluttered workbench, trying to ignore the sparks showering nearby. "Stitch," I said, raising my voice over the din. "I need a trailer chassis, heavy-duty, low-profile. Needs to handle a distributed load of maybe 10,000 pounds? Mostly liquid?" Stitch shut off his torch, lifted his welding mask, and wiped sweat from his brow. He peered at my sketch. 10,000 pounds? Liquid? What are you hauling? Rocket fuel? Industrial sludge? "Water," I said. "Basically, I'm putting a small swimming pool on top of it." Stitch stared at me for a solid 10 seconds, his expression unreadable. Then he let out a short bark of laughter. "A pool? On a trailer? You serious?" "Deadly serious." He shook his head, but a grin played on his lips. "All right, crazy man. Gonna need double axles, heavy-duty suspension, electric brakes on both, reinforced I-beam frame, maybe steel decking. Gonna need leveling jacks, serious ones, at all 4 corners. Why in God's name?" "HOA wouldn't approve my patio," I explained curtly. Stitch's grin widened. "HOA. Say no more. Best damn reason I've heard all week. Yeah, I can build your Aqua Chariot chassis. Gonna cost you, though. And don't come crying to me when the damn thing sloshes over on a sharp turn. Deal?" Next, the vessel itself. A standard above-ground pool wouldn't work. I needed a rigid custom container, preferably fiberglass, with that tricky infinity edge built in. My search led me to Finn Finnegan's Fiberglass Fantasies, a dusty workshop near the marina that smelled perpetually of resin and acetone. Finn looked like a retired surfer, all laid-back vibes and sun-bleached hair. "Finn," I said, showing him my more detailed pool sketch. "I need a custom fiberglass tank. Roughly 8 by 12, maybe 4 feet deep. Needs to be super strong. And this one edge," I pointed, "needs to be lower, with a channel underneath to catch overflow. Like an infinity pool edge." Finn whistled softly. "Gnarly, like an Infinity Edge, but portable? What's this for, man? Some kind of mobile dolphin therapy unit? Personal recreational aquatic vehicle, I replied, trying to keep a straight face. Whoa, okay, fiberglass is strong, yeah, we can reinforce it like crazy, but keeping that edge perfectly level for the overflow on a trailer? That's gonna be the trick, my dude. Gonna need constant adjustment with jacks, and a serious pump system to get that overflow water back in. You thought about filtration? Heating? Just filtration for now, I said. Chlorine system. Finn shrugged. Righteous. Well, if you're serious, I can probably shape that shell for you. Never built an infinity pool on wheels before, but hey, sounds like a challenge. Deal number 2. Finally the guts, plumbing, pump, filter, the circulation system for the Infinity Edge. This needed someone meticulous. I found Gus, owner of Precision Pool and Spa Systems. Gus was the opposite of laid-back, Finn neat, organized, wearing a collared shirt, his van impeccably clean. He loved technical problems. I explained the whole crazy concept. Gus listened intently, occasionally nodding, a thoughtful frown on his face. When I finished, he didn't laugh or question my sanity. Instead, he pulled out a notepad. Fascinating, he declared. A closed-loop aquatic system on a mobile platform with an Infinity Edge. Okay. Challenges. Maintaining level for the weir edge, vibration affecting plumbing joints, power source for the pump and filter, adequate balance tank capacity for the overflow surge. We'll need flexible piping, schedule 80 PVC maybe, with vibration damping connectors. Self-priming pump, definitely. Cartridge filter for ease of maintenance on the go. We could put the pump, filter, and a decent-sized balance tank right under the chassis. Maybe build a skid for it. How are you powering this? Shore power connection? Onboard generator? He was already sketching plumbing schematics. Gus was not only in, he was excited by the sheer mechanical absurdity of it all. Deal number 3. The following weeks were a whirlwind of fabrication and mounting horror. Stitch welded together a trailer chassis that looked sturdy enough to survive re-entry from orbit. Finn delivered the gleaming white fiberglass pool shell, surprisingly light for its size, but still needing a crane to lift it onto the waiting trailer in my driveway. That event alone drew a crowd. "Mark, what is that? A giant baptismal font?" yelled Mr. Henderson. "Building a koi pond, Mark?" asked Mrs. Gable. Cynthia appeared almost instantly, clipboard already in hand. "Gregory, what is the meaning of this monstrosity? Is that a pool shell? You most certainly did not receive ARC approval for a pool installation." "Morning, Cynthia," I chirped cheerfully. "It's not an installation, see? It's on a trailer. It's vehicular. Entirely different set of rules." I patted the trailer hitch. Cynthia stared, speechless for once, her brain clearly struggling to categorize this new horror within her precious bylaws. She took several photos and retreated, undoubtedly to consult her rulebook and rally the committee. Gus then spent 3 days crawling under the trailer, meticulously plumbing the pump, filter, heater — I decided to add a small propane heater, why not? — and the crucial balance tank for the Infinity Edge. He used flexible hoses, reinforced joints, and more clamps than seemed strictly necessary. "Vibration is the enemy, Mark," he kept muttering. "And leaks, definitely the enemy." We did the first water test with just a few inches in the bottom. Leaks everywhere. Gus patiently tightened fittings, applied more sealant, replaced a faulty valve. Test 2. More water. Fewer leaks, but still some weeping around the pump housing. More tightening. Test 3. Filled it halfway. Held water. But the weight was already making the heavy-duty trailer tires bulge ominously. Stitch had warned me about the weight. I started researching load range G tires. Finally, we decided to add some aesthetic touches. If it was going to be ridiculous, it should look intentionally ridiculous. I got Tony the Mason from Greg's Castle Keep project down the street, Apparently, we shared contractors now. To apply some leftover faux stone panels around the base of the trailer, hiding the chassis and jacks. I installed underwater color-changing LED lights. Gus rigged up a connection for a small propane tank to power the heater. Finn fabricated a neat, detachable aluminum ladder. It looked like a high-end hot tub had mated with a construction trailer. The day of the true maiden voyage arrived. Filling it took the better part of 6 hours with 2 garden hoses snaking across the lawn. My water meter spun like a top. The trailer groaned under the immense weight, easily 5 tons of water alone, plus the shell, the chassis, the equipment. The tires looked dangerously flat, even though they were rated for heavy loads. Heart pounding, I started the pump and filter system. Water circulated. I nervously opened the valve for the propane heater. It fired up with a reassuring whoomph. Then, the moment of truth. The infinity edge. I used the heavy-duty leveling jacks Stitch had installed, tweaking each corner millimeter by millimeter, using a spirit level on the weir edge, until water finally began to spill smoothly over the lowered side into the hidden catchment channel below. Gus's pump system kicked in, sucking the overflow from the balance tank and returning it to the pool. It worked. It actually worked. An infinity pool. On wheels. In my driveway. It was the most beautiful, stupid thing I had ever seen. Time for deployment. With agonizing slowness, using my heavy-duty pickup truck, I'd had to buy one specifically for this project, another unforeseen expense. I carefully backed the colossal aqua trailer out of my driveway. The water sloshed alarmingly. Steering felt like trying to dock the Queen Mary. But I managed it, parking the entire rig legally along the curb directly in front of my house. The effect on serene vistas was immediate and profound. Cars driving by slowed to a crawl, drivers gawking. People emerged from their houses pointing, whispering, taking pictures. Kids gathered at a safe distance, eyes wide. It was like a UFO had landed, only wetter. Cynthia arrived within minutes, her face a mask of incandescent rage. "Mark, Parker, you cannot! You absolutely cannot park a swimming pool and on a public street. It's indecent. It's unsafe. It's probably leaking. It's a violation." She practically shrieked the last word. "Afternoon, Cynthia," I said calmly, leaning against my mobile oasis. "It's a legally registered trailer, parked according to City Ordinance 7/3B, observing the 48-hour limit. The vehicle code doesn't specify what the trailer can or cannot contain, only its dimensions and registration status." I patted the faux stone siding. "Just enjoying my recreational vehicle?" Predictably, she called the police. 2 officers arrived. Officers Jones and Rodriguez again. They seemed to draw the short straw for calls on my street. They got out of their cruiser, looked at the pool trailer, looked at me, looked at the sputtering Cynthia, and sighed in unison. "Okay, sir," Officer Jones began, rubbing his temples. "Dispatch said, and I quote, 'There is a swimming pool parked on Serenity Lane.'" "Afternoon, officers," I said brightly. "Just my custom trailer here, fully registered and insured." Officer Rodriguez walked slowly around the behemoth. "It's full of water, sir. Like, a lot of water. Is this thing even road legal? What happens if one of those tires blows? What if it springs a leak?" I explained the heavy-duty construction, the load-rated tires, the professional plumbing. I pointed out the detachable safety ladder wasn't even attached right now, preventing unauthorized boarding. They checked my truck's registration, the trailer's registration. Yes, I'd actually registered it as a custom trailer. And my license. "Well," Officer Jones conceded reluctantly, "technically it appears to be a legally parked trailer right now. Registration's valid. But sir, we're already getting calls. It's causing a major visual distraction. If that thing leaks significantly, or if someone gets hurt trying to climb on it, you're going to be liable. We strongly advise you move this vehicle back onto your private property before something happens." They left, shaking their heads, clearly wondering what fresh suburban hell they'd driven into. Move it back? Oh, I'd move it. But not just back. Emboldened by my initial success and the cops' reluctant confirmation of its technical legality, for now, I decided to take my show on the road, or at least around the cul-de-sac. The next Saturday, I hosted a small backyard barbecue. Getting the pool trailer into the backyard required dismantling a section of fence and navigating the multi-ton behemoth across the lawn, leaving deep tire ruts. Another future HOA violation, probably. But seeing my friends splashing happily in the infinity pool on wheels, right where my rejected patio should have been, was pure bliss. Then I got bolder. Observing the 72-hour limit for RV trailer parking in driveways, I'd keep it there for precisely 71 hours and 59 minutes, then painstakingly maneuver it back onto the street for a day or two before repeating the process. Sometimes, if I knew Cynthia was having one of her garden club meetings, I might just happen to park it legally down the street, directly in her line of sight. The sheer logistical absurdity of constantly moving a 5-ton swimming pool became part of the performance art. The HOA, predictably, went ballistic. Cynthia and the ARC were in full panic mode. They scoured the CC&Rs, searching desperately for any rule, any clause, any comma that could be used to outlaw my aquatic monstrosity. Violation notice. #1. Improperly parked oversized recreational vehicle. My response? It is not an RV as defined by Statute X, lacking sleeping cooking facilities. It is a registered trailer. Violation notice #2. Unsecured hazardous materials container. My response? Water is not classified as hazardous material. The container is structurally sound, certified by Welder X and Fiberglass Specialist Y. Violation notice #3. Aesthetic nuisance affecting community harmony. My response? Aesthetic standards for registered vehicles are not defined in the bylaws. Please cite specific violation code. Violation notice #4. Potential water runoff hazard. My response? Minor splashing during transit is unavoidable. No significant leakage has occurred. System designed with overflow catchment. They were flailing, and they knew it. The police were called several more times for blocking traffic during my slow-moving relocation efforts, for the suspicious propane tank attached to the heater, for creating a public spectacle. Each time the officers would arrive, sigh, confirm I wasn't technically breaking any laws at that exact moment, issue vague warnings about safety and nuisance, and leave, looking increasingly weary. The final showdown came at the annual Serene Vistas HOA meeting. Cynthia, armed with a PowerPoint presentation titled The Aquatic Menace of Lot 14, detailed my pool trailer's reign of terror, complete with blurry photos, neighbor complaints, and dire warnings about plummeting property values and potential sinkholes. She demanded the board authorize immediate legal action to have the illegal, unsafe, aesthetically abominable structure removed and destroyed. Then it was my turn. I calmly walked to the podium, holding the trailer registration, copies of the city parking ordinances, and the HOA bylaws. I might have even brought Gus the plumber for technical support. Members of the board, neighbors, I began. What you see parked intermittently at my property is not an illegal structure. It is a legally registered custom trailer. I held up the registration. It complies with all state and local vehicle codes. The HOA bylaws, while extensive regarding permanent structures like pools and patios, I shot a pointed look at Cynthia, are remarkably vague when it comes to the contents of legally parked vehicles and trailers. I explained the technical specs, the safety features, exaggerating slightly, the professional construction. I argued it was no different, from a regulatory standpoint, than a large boat on a trailer or a high-end RV. You cannot regulate the contents of my trailer any more than you can regulate the color of the kayaks on Mr. Henderson's roof rack, I concluded. The room descended into chaos. Shouting matches erupted between pro-pool and anti-pool factions. Cynthia was livid. The board members looked lost. Their lawyer, hastily consulted via speakerphone, mumbled something about novel legal territory, potential for costly litigation, and advising a negotiated settlement. In the end, paralysis won. The board, terrified of a lawsuit they might lose and the cost of rewriting the bylaws to specifically ban mobile infinity pools, a phrase they probably never thought they'd utter, punted. They issued me one final token fine for repeatedly parking an oversized vehicle in a manner causing neighborhood disruption. $100, which I paid, and extracted a good faith promise from me to keep the pool primarily parked in my driveway and covered when not in use. And so the great pool war ended not with a bang, but with a gurgle. The infinity pool on wheels remains. It sits in my driveway most of the time, a shimmering blue rectangle of defiance. It's a ridiculous amount of work to maintain, a nightmare to move, and my water bills are astronomical. But every time I see Cynthia walk by, her eyes studiously avoiding my driveway, I feel a deep, satisfying sense of victory. I never got my flagstone patio. Instead, I got a 5-ton mobile monument to spite, absurdity, and the glorious exploitation of loopholes. Sometimes I float in it on a sunny afternoon, margarita in hand, and think about the sheer, beautiful stupidity of it all. And you know what? It feels surprisingly serene. Now, about that matching mobile sauna Stitch mentioned,